Hey, hi, Jimmy. Jimmy says we are a go. Oh, that's what I like to hear. So I'm sitting here. This is my office. Those of you who have watched me live stream before know that this is where I don't know, I hesitate to call it magic. This is where things happen that are podcast related. You can see behind me here. Oh, sorry, Midori. Midori likes to share my chair with me. So she's kind of in here with me. Let's see. Right. Move my head out of the way. Sorry, Puff. There's my Blue Yeti microphone on my bookshelf. That is what I use to record Girl in Space and the Right Now podcast. It's a fantastic, I want to say relatively inexpensive podcasting microphone. It's USB, so it just plugs into your computer. I have a little windscreen for it, which is the little foam hat that sits on top. And yeah, it's really easy. Just plug and play. There's adjustment for the gain on the back. It's everything. It's everything I need. I do have a special guest, Midori. Yes, she's sharing my chair with me. So she is here tonight. Oh, good. We have a lot of people here. Jennifer, Tim, hi. Robert, Andrew, Paul. Hello, all of you. Derek, hello. I'm so glad to see you all here. My gosh, you're so fantastic. Let's see. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in. Otherwise, I can also just ramble for a while about podcasting. So you let me know. Lately, podcast-wise, I released a new episode today, episode 77 of the Right Now podcast. And that podcast has been going now for 5 years. And yes, I am only on episode 77. Yeah, I know. You'd think that, it's a weekly show. I should have 52 times 4, like 200 episodes, but I'm on 77. So it's interesting. And I have noticed that my audience grows and I do get more downloads the more consistent I am with my posting. So I don't know. I've just noticed that over the 4 or 5 years that I've been doing that show. My listeners have kind of come and gone. And people rediscover the show, which is nice. And then since podcasting is evergreen, which means that most podcasts sort of never lose their immediacy. They never lose the point of why they exist. You can listen to the Right Now podcast at any time and it'll make sense. It's not dated. So it's kind of nice to see people go through it there. Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. So Grant says, how was LA? It was really nice. It was really cool. I'm doing some magical things. Some of you may know about these and some of you may not. But I'm working on, let's see, what can I say about it? Bringing Girl in Space to other mediums. And so I had some meetings this week and it was it was a really good time. And also, it was like 70 degrees there and there were palm trees everywhere. And I miss it just a little bit. I came back to South Dakota here and it's like 16 degrees. So I'm back in my like puffy vests and flannel. I've got some candles going behind me to like try to warm up the air a little bit more. Okay. Oh, I'm getting some really good questions here. Okay. First important question from Derek. How do you prefer your coffee? Black as the night. I don't know if you can see this. I hesitate to tip it too far forward so I don't like drown my one and only computer that I use for everything, including podcasting. But yes, it is. Oh, it's so good. It even has like the little oil on top. That's how you know it's good. Andrew asks, so this is a little bit what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. Andrew asks, any advice on release schedules if it really matters if you're inconsistent? Okay, I'm going to like parse this a little bit. It kind of depends what you mean by if it matters. I know, I'm that person. Release schedules, I think that people, your listeners, value integrity and they like having something they can depend on. And so when I tell people the Right Now podcast is a weekly show and then I don't show up weekly, I lose my audience. I lose a lot of the trust that they put into me and my punctuality. So I would say that if you set an expectation, you should meet the expectation. Now, I say this fully aware that I am a hypocrite when I say this, because I promised the Right Now podcast weekly. I'm getting back to that in 2019. I just released a new episode today. And so I am trying to stick with a regular posting schedule. And I've noticed that regular postings, you'll steadily grow and you grow and you grow. So if you have a weekly show and you miss a week, which I've looked at my numbers in Libsyn, and if I miss a week, my audience drops and it takes several weeks to build my audience back up to where it was before. So I don't have any statistics that say specifically like, oh, you'll lose 3% of your audience for every week that you don't post consistently. So I don't have any data for you like that. But I have noticed a difference. When I went on hiatus for the Right Now podcast a few months or maybe even a year ago at this point, I lost a lot of followers and it took me a while to build my audience back. My numbers for Girl in Space are way down. And that's fine because I'm not posting new episodes right now. So the only people who are listening to the show while I'm writing season 2 for Girl in Space are people who are newly discovering it. There's also, I think, people who are doing re-listens, but Libsyn doesn't track those re-listens because it marks each individual listener, I think, from their IP address. So that's such a good question. So basically, if you're going to commit to a release schedule, so this is a weekly podcast, stick to your release schedule. It will build up trust and rapport with your audience. It'll show your listeners that they can believe what you say. And since podcasting is it's so big in authority marketing that you really can't afford to lose that trust. Midori had a question. Yes? Well, at least she's not puking on my floor, so that's good. Let's see. Eric says, if my podcast tries to kill me, should I panic? No, stay very calm. All right. Get a pair of earplugs. So just put those right in there and just refuse to acknowledge it. And eventually your podcast will go away. Okay, good. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Paul makes a great point. I'm going to try to scroll back. Paul says, it's hard to put stuff out on time when you have another job and kids and stuff. It absolutely is. I don't even have kids and I struggle with it. So I don't even know. Those of you who are parents and you're podcasting, my mind is blown by what you do. So do the best you can. You can also just say, you can set expectations in the meta description in Apple Podcasts or wherever you put your meta description for your show. So if you have a Twitter account for your show, if you have a Facebook page for your show, just make sure that you're explicit in the description, in the meta description, that instead of maybe saying this is a weekly show about writing, you can just say this show comes out whenever I have time to produce it. So, and your audience might love that. They might love the authenticity and the honesty. It never hurts to be 100% completely truthful, unless you're a murderer. Don't confess to your murders in a podcast. You heard it here first. It's a pro tip from me to you. Graham says, spill the beans. I can't. But when I can, I'll let you know. You'll be on my list. You'll be on my cool people list of people who get to know stuff. Okay, Tim. Tim asks, what are the top 3 things you'd go back and change? Oh my gosh, about the Girl in Space process, if you could. those of you who are watching this right now, you may know that I made Girl in Space sort of experimentally. I made the show sort of by the seat of my pants. And so what I mean by that is I had a cool idea and I wrote a little 30-page script, and I was like, I'm just going to experiment this and see what happens. So I made the show art. At the time, I made the show art in PowerPoint. Okay, Midori's leaving my office. Okay, I made the show art in PowerPoint just really quickly, using an unsplash photo and some text over it, and just recorded the part of X, which is the main character who I play, just for convenience's sake, not because I'm I think I'm a great actor or anything, because I'm not. And then I had my mother-in-law record a few lines for Charlotte. And so it's very flying by the seat of my pants just to see what this whole audio drama thing was about. So I would definitely, one of the things I would go back and change is I might do some planning, because I wrote each individual episode of Girl in Space as I was releasing it. So I don't recommend doing that. It had, it has its pros and cons. If your planning is going to get in the way of you releasing a show, so if you're the kind of person who you'll plan and plan and plan forever, and your perfectionism will keep you from launching, then do it episode by episode just to make sure that you're getting the show out there. So like I would recommend doing that. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm losing my train of thought because there's so many things I would change. Okay, so I would do more planning. I would probably write the whole season and then record the whole season. And then while I was waiting for actors to get their lines back to me, I might do some more writing. Like I would just make everything more streamlined and sustainable, basically. I would also, number one, I would work with professional paid actors. Not that I don't love my cast. I love my cast. If you are listening and you're a member of my cast, I love you. But I would have agreements with my cast members because I'll be open about this. None of the people in Girl in Space, well, very few of them are actually actors. They're friends, they're roommates, they're family. And I recently had a main character just was like, hey, I'm not an actor and I'm not comfortable acting, so I'm out. And I was like, okay, you're a fan favorite. So, but I think I have a replacement for this person, so don't worry. But I would definitely have my actors sign something that would be like, hey, I'm not gonna ditch you in the middle of recording. That's two things. We'll say that's good enough for now. I'm going to keep going because I'm seeing these beautiful, beautiful questions. It's Paula. Hi. I am like way behind in, let's see. Jeremiah asks, what would your advice be for an audio drama Kickstarter campaign? My advice would be look at what other audio dramas are doing successfully on Kickstarter. I really love what Jordan Cobb, who runs Giannis Descending, and she has one now for Primordial Deep. I think she's running the Indiegogo right now, or maybe it recently closed. I think she does a fantastic job. She's very present with the campaign. I'm gonna have to text her later and tell her I used her as a good example. She's very present with her campaign. She's very good at fulfilling, again, the expectations that she sets. She's very, she does a good job of sort of tweeting about it and posting about it online in a way that is fun and engaging and not spammy. So if you look at the Primordial Deep and Giannis Descending accounts, and I think both of which she shares under her personal Twitter, which is Inkfemoral. So please go follow her. She does things really well. And then Lisette Alvarez, who does Kalila Stormfire's Economical Magical Services, has an Indiegogo going right now And that is for their, I don't know if it's season 2 or season 3, but they have all sorts of really fun bonus content. There is another one going on right now, and I've been tweeting about it, and now I can't remember what it is. But I would suggest look at what the good shows, the shows that you like, the shows who have probably a similar crossover with your audience. Check out what they're doing. We all, I don't want to say we all copy each other, but we all can get inspiration from what other people are doing that seems to be working. I can tell you what you don't want to do is emulate, I feel bad about saying this. Do you remember the Kickstarter for Rabbits? So Rabbits was one of the Terry Miles shows that actually I really liked the show, but they were asking for something like $60,000 for season 2. And the numbers didn't add up. So be honest with your numbers. Don't ask for $100,000 if you only need 3, budget everything correctly, fulfill your promises. I'm rambling. Yeah, look at the good examples. I hope that helps. Carrie says, I like my coffee with about a 1/3 creamer. So we are very different, but I appreciate your perspective. Graham says, should I be drinking caffeine this late in the day? No, I should not, but I am. Okay, I am getting spammed by somebody, so we're just going to go ahead and block that user. Awesome, good. Okay. All right. So Peter asks, hey, Sarah, what advice can you give when it comes to promoting your show when new content is a long way out? Okay, so I can speak to this because you've all heard, I think, the story of my infamous 8-month gap between episode 12 and episode 13 of Girl in Space. Basically, what I did during that time was I continued to build my audience. I continued to I continued to essentially be a personality on Twitter. And Peter, I don't know if you're on Twitter, if you're Facebook, but as long as you are providing some kind of value, and so that value can be, it can be humor, it can be a glimpse into your life, into your process. There's a lot you can share when you're not currently promoting your work or you're not currently producing your show. Oh, wait, actually, on that note, I have, this just happens to be in my pile right here. There's this wonderful book called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. And it's just like a really fun read. You can see I've like scribbled all over the inside of it. But this actually talks about what it means to be a creator online, like what it means to post about your work and to be active even when you don't have a project coming out. So that was very helpful for me. I mostly just recommend other shows like, hey, if you're waiting for the next season of Girl in Space, you might enjoy Marsfall or Diary of a Space Archivist or Wolf 359. People seem to appreciate that. Yeah, otherwise, just keep creating value. So get in close, understand who your audience is on whatever platform it is you're using. Understand who they are and why they followed you in the first place. So why are they following you? What do you share that's valuable to them? I think a lot of people for Girl in Space, oh, this is going to make me sound like a jerk, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think they like to know a little bit about the inside of my life. So as a creator, going behind the curtain is really intriguing for a lot of listeners. Like a lot of podcast fans love to know what you're doing when you are not, like actively recording the show. So like for me right here, I've got my notes for the next season. If you can tease stuff like that, if you can show like, hey, I doodled this little picture of my two main characters, and you post that. I mean, whatever it is that your audience would find appealing, and just post once a day or a couple times a week, or even just once a week. Basically, you're looking to maintain people's interest in you so that then when you do have new content to share, they're there to gobble it up. So, and if we're not talking about, oh, Midori just joined me. If we're not talking, yes, if we're not talking about social media, you can always do promo swaps in your RSS feed. Yes, promo swaps. You can do, here, I kind of want to show you Midori, who sits like this when I'm writing. I don't know if you can see her. Hello. Hi. I'm just going to look very, very melancholy. Okay. So you can do, if I hesitate to say like, oh, produce a ton of bonus content and release that to your RSS feed. But you can do that if you have just little 1 minute day in the life of for your characters, or if you have a nonfiction show, just, hey, you know, this is Sarah, just a quick thought about creative writing, just to bridge the gap between season 1 and season 2. I'm out on a walk and I just thought about creativity and its relationship to nature. And here's my thought on that real quick. Okay, goodbye. So there's some things you can do there to bridge the gap. I hope that some of those ideas are helpful. Takara asks, when is season 2 of Girl in Space coming out? So if all goes according to plan, right now I am looking at the end of 2020. So the end of this year. With the way that my schedule works and the way that my business works, I've got a lot of business stuff to do between now and March. And then March is PodFest. So I'm traveling to Orlando for that. And then April, I'm doing a live show in Seattle. So there will be a Girl in Space live show in Seattle. You may have seen me promoting it online for Wi-Fi Sci-Fi. So that's there. And that goes through the end of the month. So I still need to write my script for that. So I essentially have to write an episode of Girl in Space before my live show and record it and practice it. I'm not nervous. I'm a little nervous. And then after that, in June, I'm slated to start writing season 2 of Girl in Space. So that'll give you a little bit an idea of the timeline. It does take a while to record and produce and all of that stuff. But yeah, that should come out roughly near the end of 2020. Paul asks, what other shows do you enjoy? Oh, I enjoy so many podcasts. It's actually, I don't want to say it's a problem. It's like, oh, I love books. I have too many books. It's not really a problem. It just makes me sad that I can't read every book and listen to every podcast. And like that poor girl on YouTube, I can't hug every cat. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, right now, what am I really into? I love Point Mystic. If you haven't heard Point Mystic yet, it is sort of in the veins of the Black Tapes. So it is sort of like a live, I mean, it's fiction, but it's like a live documentary about these mysterious things that are happening in the woods with these local children. It's really, really good. Christopher Reinaga does a fantastic job. And I think that the family in the show is actually his family. So it's like his wife and his child are like the other actors in it, and they're really good. So Point Mystic is amazing. Rose Drive, if you have not heard Rose Drive yet, they just dropped the finale for season 1. And it is so good. And season 2 is going to be crazy. So anyway, I got a little bit of a sneak peek when I visited Raul in LA, but you will want to listen to Rose Drive. That is a fantastic piece of fiction. Gosh, what else do I like? I mentioned Janus Descending earlier, which is a really beautiful sort of space tragedy. It's a tragedy, so be prepared. I love Wolf 359. I love Marsfall. I love all of these sort of classic sci-fi audio dramas. Diary of a Space Archivist is really delightful. Oh my gosh, I could sit here. So, okay, what I might do is just open up my little podcast app here and just like show you. Oh, let's see if we can color adjust here. There. Oh no, that didn't do what I wanted it to do at all. I don't know if you can like see. There we go. There we go. There we go. Oh, that's right. Amelia. I haven't listened to Carrier yet. I've got Cryptids, Cryptic, Culpable, The Crypto Naturalist, Dark Tome, Darkest Nights, Decatapes, Diary of a Space Archivist. The Dropout. They recently came out with that documentary of Elizabeth Holmes on, I don't know if it was HBO or something, but I think this podcast is better coverage of the story than the video. Let's see. We'll just go through here. EOS 10. Forest 404 is really beautiful. Well, there's my own shows. Let's see. Greater Boston is really delightful. Husk is really, really fun sci-fi. The Infinite Now is one of my personal favorites. That's done by Richard Penner, who I think now is working on Greater Boston. It's just like really kind of fun, bizarre, sort of, oh my gosh, like chit chats in space. But they're really, really beautifully written and I love them. Is This Adulting? I feel like you can't see my screen anymore. There we go. No, maybe not. Anyway, Is This Adulting? Limetown is really beautiful and amazing. Mabel is one of my favorites. The Magnus Archives, Marsfall, Mars Corp, a lot of Mars themed stuff. Mirrors is really good by Jamie Killen. Oh my gosh. Look at all these amazing shows. I don't have time to listen to all of them. Oz 9 is delightful. That'll be one of the co-performers at Wi-Fi Sci-Fi. Oh, Palimpsest is really good. It's sort of like modern hauntings. There's Point Mystic, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Oh my gosh. Six Cold Feet is really good. I think it has some language, so it might not be family friendly, but Six Cold Feet is an Australian audio drama. I really enjoyed it. It took some twists and turns I was not expecting, and it has music in it, which is delightful. Spines is one of my favorites. That was one of the shows I first listened to when I was planning Girl in Space, because I was like, can a single narrator audio drama exist? And I was like, well, Spines did it, so I can too. And then I added in like 17 other characters, but okay. Sealed Stars. Ooh. Time Bombs is in there somewhere. Time Storm is really good. Oh my gosh, The Truth is amazing. Unwell, I'm enjoying listening to Unwell. I haven't listened to their newest episode yet. Vega is delightful. Oh my gosh, We Fix Space Junk. We're Alive, of course. Welcome to Night Vale, of course. What's the Frequency? Is like psychedelic noir fiction mystery, which is really fun. Windfall, Wine and Crime. Okay, that was a lot of different podcasts, but that's just a taste of what I listen to. One of the things that I believe is, and I tell this to writers too, if you're going to be a writer, you need to consume the media that you're creating. You need to read books. It's just good for your brain. It's good for your art. It's good for your craft. The same is true with podcasts. So if you have a nonfiction podcast, you should be listening to other nonfiction podcasts. If you have an audio drama, you should probably listen to a few other audio dramas. What that does is it keeps you sort of in the know with what other people are doing. It helps generate ideas for your own show. It keeps you a member of the community. And it lets you know that like, oh, I'm not doing something really cliche, or I'm not doing something that's been done a billion times before. So those are the other shows I enjoy. Oh, Carmela's on her Pomodoro break to listen. Wonderful. I know Carmela is working studiously on a show. So, oh, Carmela asks, how do you fight the feeling of production being a chore? Oh, that's such a good question. You know, I'm just going to be honest with you. Sometimes production is a chore. And that's it. Like, I know that it's really tempting to be like, oh, here's some ways that you can make it fun. But a lot of the time, our work can get really tedious. I'm thinking about I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and did one of my favorite TED Talks of all time about your elusive creative genius. She talked about writing being the most boring job in the universe. Like it's her dream job, but it's also really boring. But she would also never choose to do anything else. And I think that I feel similarly about the more tedious aspects of podcasting. So there's aspects that I love. Like for me, I love the writing process. Like it's hard at times, but it's always a new challenge for me. It has everything that I like. I can create, I can direct my characters, I can let my characters direct me. I can see the word count growing. Like it's just a very fulfilling process for me. What is not fulfilling is audio editing and sound design. Like I do those from both my shows, and especially the sound design for Girl in Space. It is not my favorite. I do not love it. It's really tedious and it takes me a very long time. So usually for a 30-minute episode of Girl in Space, I'm usually doing audio editing and sound design for about 60 hours. And it is a lot. It's a lot. But I do it anyway because I want to publish the episode. So I don't know if it comes down to making your peace with the fact that I'm doing something a little bit tedious so that I can release this thing that I've made into the world. So I don't know if it's making your peace with that. I don't know if it is coming up with some kind of system or process that makes it less of a chore and more fun, or if it just means that you need to partner up with somebody who can do your editing for you, or whatever it is in your podcasting workflow that's a chore for you. I know many podcasters outsource their editing, they outsource their sound design, a lot of their production aspects. A lot of them outsource their graphic design. That's a chore for a lot of people. A lot of people outsource their show notes. I spent 2 hours this morning writing show notes for episode 77 of the Right Now podcast. And part of me was like, I could have just paid someone like $20 to do that. So I think it comes down to what your financial situation looks like and what you ultimately want out of your podcasting experience, and then what that means to you. I feel like that's not incredibly helpful, but maybe it's helpful to know that it's not just you. And it's interesting because as somebody, so like I podcast full time. And so I'm always tempted to be like, I'm loving every minute of my life. When really a lot of minutes of my life are spent doing really tedious stuff like writing show notes and making the cover art for an episode and doing sound design that I don't enjoy. So I hope that helps a little bit. Hi, Anne. Anne says hi, late to the party. Oh, good. Let's see. Tom asks, for unpaid actors, so this is for an audio drama or fictional podcast, is food and public acknowledgement and praise generally adequate compensation? My answer is it depends. I would always err on the side of paying your actors money, but I know that not all of us have massive budgets. So if you're doing an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter or some kind of fundraising, make sure that you allocate, hey, paying my actors is important when you're doing that campaign. But if your actors agree to be unpaid, so like if you are like, hey, I'm going to work with you, I'm going to cast you as this, please know ahead of time I'm not able to pay you. Make sure they're okay with that. And then try to find some way to just pay them back. So like food, public acknowledgement, praise, if that is good for them, that's awesome. My mother-in-law does the voice of Charlotte on Girl in Space, and she seems to be just, happy to be involved in the show. Other actors I have paid. So it depends what your rapport is with your actors, but I really want to state publicly that I want to see more of us in a place where we're paying our actors, even if it's just an honorarium, even if it's just $5 an episode or $5 an hour. I really want to, because what's happening is there more and more corporations and media outlets are getting into podcasting. And as that happens, us indie folks who really don't have a budget or any resources, I feel like the divide between indie and established or networked or corporate or whatever you want to call them is going to become greater and greater. And I would like to keep us at least a little bit bridged by saying like, hey, we can also pay our actors. It's maybe not as much, but so I don't know. It goes back to the whole, payment versus exposure versus time and what someone's time is worth. It's a really hard thing to talk about too, because I think culturally we're so uncomfortable talking about money. And that even is part of it as well. But my blanket advice is always pay your actors what you can. So just say like, hey guys, I'm buying you all dinner tonight. That comes out to like $5 a person. Thank you for being here. If you do a live show, offer an honorarium to your actors, maybe help cover their flights. And if that's not possible for you, then, talk to the friends and family, which is how I started doing it. I hope that's helpful. Ooh. Oh, J. Michael DeAngelis asks, do you have any thoughts on what effect Spotify buying or signing exclusive contracts with podcast networks and studios will have for the indie podcast scene? I think that as the audience for podcasts grows and expands past the people who were sort of the underground indie fans to begin with, expectations for our shows are going to rise, because it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, we are on the same playing field as, name NPR show here or name Gimlet show here. We're on the same playing field, which is exciting because like, Girl in Space can be found in the same directory as like Sandra and Carrier and, all of these other shows that you just saw when I went through my list. They're all out there in the same place. But the other side of that sword, and the one that will cut us, is that people are going to expect that same level of quality from the podcasts that they listen to. So we're on the same playing field, but it might be getting more and more of a difficult field to play on. I'm not going to say that like, indie shows are doomed. No, because we're not. There's so many talented people. There's so many talented people on the indie side of podcasting. And, I think if anything, we'll continue getting exposure and we'll continue to attract the same people that we have attracted in the past. So a lot of marginalized folks who aren't going to be portrayed by the larger media, a lot of non-binary, trans, people of color that aren't represented in, mainstream media. I think that indie podcasting will continue to be a haven for them. So from the audience side, I think that's going to be interesting as their expectations raise. As for the other side of things, I think it's going to come down to what does it mean to compete, but do we even need to compete with studio and network productions? And I don't know what the answer is. You see reports coming out from like Edison Research and stuff that are talking about share of ear. And what that means for the non-marketing folks is, you can only listen to so many podcasts a day. Which ones are you going to listen to? So we're fighting over share of ear, essentially. But on the other hand, I don't think we are. So I like to liken this to the book industry. You see all these books. This is not even a tenth of my collection. I have a whole library in the other room with walls of bookshelves, but these are my favorites that I keep in my office. Thousands and thousands of books are published on a daily basis. And you never just listen. You never just read one book. You never just listen to one podcast. You listen to a ton, and you listen to them at different times in your life and different periods in your life. And so I never want to say that we're competing with each other, because I don't think we are. Somebody can enjoy multiple podcasts. And as I've said before on these live streams, every podcast is not for everyone. There are people out there who hate science fiction. Good. Girl in Space is not for them. There are people out there who are not writers. Good. I don't want them to listen to Right Now. Like, that's fine. Let your audience be self-selecting. But what you do want to do is make a concentrated effort to connect with the people who need to listen to your show, so your audience. And I think a lot of it's going to come down to connecting with those people and knowing how to market your show to your audience effectively. So I think a lot of this is going to come down to marketing. And marketing doesn't always mean dollars or whatever currency it is that you work with. Oh, yay. I'm excited to see you in April as well. Oh boy. Okay. Catching up. Oh, Derek says, What's the Frequency was one of the first to get me into audio drama. That's awesome. I think some of my first shows were, I listened to Welcome to Night Vale because it was kind of the only one that I knew about at the time. And then I started diving into Tin Can. I don't know if you've heard that one. It is a single voice. Well, it starts off single voice, a sci-fi show by David Devereaux and the people who make Middle Below and a lot of those other really beautifully designed shows. So, oh my gosh, there's just so many good ones. Okay. Oh, okay. Tim asks, what do you do when you come across another podcast or other piece of media that is super similar to your own? And what if theirs came first? I get this question a lot from both podcasters and writers. So there's a lot going on here, and some of it's psychological. So we have a confirmation bias built into our brains. Some people call this yellow car syndrome. So say you're, wealthy enough that you can go out and buy a new car, because that's the kind of successful podcaster you are. So you go out and you buy a car and you're like, oh, I want to stand out and be really cool. So I'm going to get a yellow car. And so you buy your yellow car because nobody else has a yellow car. And then you start driving your yellow car around, and like everywhere you see, like every car looks yellow. Well, not every car, but like you start seeing yellow cars everywhere. And you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was unique. So this is the psychological thing. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to go in and explain it. I just know that this is a phenomenon that happens. We look around and we try, like our brains just automatically fixate onto what we're focused on. So say you want to start an audio drama about cryptids in New York City who run an indie bookstore. And there's this whole other world, and it's, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go. But all of a sudden you're like, okay, I've got this great idea. I'm just going to go see if there's any shows like it. So you start scrolling through and you're like, there's a lot of other shows like this. And they came first. So what do you do when that happens? You can do two things. Well, you can do a lot of things, but you can either A, ditch your idea, or B, make it anyway. I will always encourage you to make it anyway, because what makes a show unique is not necessarily the concept, or what makes a show unique is not necessarily the hook or the premise or any of that stuff that you get when you're first starting out. Just because you have a show, so there's a lot of sci-fi shows out there, right? And if you boil down Girl in Space, I mean, it sounds pretty generic. Like, there's a girl stranded on a space station Like, okay, that's it. There are a lot of shows out there that deal with single voices on a space station. And some of them came before Girl in Space, and some of them came after Girl in Space. And they're all good in their own ways. They all have passionate listener bases. So what really makes a show unique? Is it the characters? Is it the story? Is it the voices? Is it the music? Is it the way that you tell the show? Is it the message that you're sharing with people through the show? Just because somebody has a similar premise to what you want to create doesn't mean that your show is going to be anything like theirs. The show Vast Horizon, I don't know if you've listened to that. It's a very good science fiction show. It's essentially about a young scientist trapped on board a space station fighting for survival. But if you listen to it, it is so different from Girl in Space. So like Vast focuses on the survival issues. It's got a way different tone. It's very dark. It's very thriller, scary, lots of choking sounds and survival situations and pain. It's very tense. It's very hard hitting. It deals with some very dark subjects. There's swearing in it. There's a lot of flashbacks. Like it's just, so the premise is very similar, but the show itself is extremely different. And, you know, Girl in Space, on the other hand, is, you know, there's baby goats and people drinking coffee and making jokes about cheese. And like, so and it's got like a warm tone and like a lot of family elements. It's very warm. So just because the premise is similar doesn't mean that the show will be similar. So long story short, make your show. Okay. There's just so many good questions tonight. I love doing this. I know in the past live streams I've done, vibe check. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm having fun doing this live stream with you. So thank you for being here. In the past live streams I've done, I've always had like a topic or something to talk about, but this Q&A is actually kind of fun. So thank you for indulging me in this. I just like to be here answering your questions and hanging out with you. Jordan asks, how key is an email list for a show versus platform subscribers? Oh my gosh, I could talk about this for like 3 hours. Oh, okay. So I'm assuming by platform subscribers, you mean like the number of people subscribed to your RSS feed, and or perhaps the amount of the number of people you have following you on a platform like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I'm just going to like lump all those platforms together. So an email list is, okay. I know email, right? It doesn't sound fun and exciting and new like social media does, but email marketing is actually some of the best marketing that you can be doing because it's permission-based marketing. So basically, a person's email inbox is part of their daily life, and more so than a social media account. And in order to get into that email inbox, you need to be invited in, which is why it's called permission marketing. So, you know, people give you their email address and then you have their permission to email them. And with email, it's not something that gets lost in a scroll. It's not something that they can easily just flip past. I mean, they have to do some kind of action with an email, whether it's delete it or archive it or open it and scan it or open it and like read every single word and maybe like click a link. So I really like email for that. If you're looking to sell something, then I definitely recommend having an email or an email list. So if you want to later down the road, like sell tickets to a live show for your podcast, if you want to sell the book that you're writing that's related to your podcast, if you want to sell workshops for like how to make a podcast, anything like that, that you want to sell, your email list is going to be invaluable. Oh, my coffee's getting cold. Otherwise, an email list is a good idea because it's something that you kind of own in a way that you don't own. This is getting creepy language, but like in a way that you don't own the people who follow you on social media. So like you have a permanent record of how to get in touch with these people if you have an email list, whereas somebody can just very easily unfollow you on Twitter, and you really have no like permanent connection there. So for all of those reasons and a lot more, because again, I could talk for hours about this, I would suggest starting an email list. And for those of you who are listening, like, what are you talking about? Basically, what you're going to do is ask people, hey, can I email you? And you do that by saying, like, you've probably seen this on websites before, like, sign up for our email list to get updates about the show, or, sign up or like register to download my PDF, which you can do on sarahwarner.com. You can go and you can download your printable podcast roadmap in exchange for your email address. And like, that's a thing that people do. And you can build that by having what's called a lead magnet. So that printable podcast roadmap that you can find on sarahwarner.com, that's called a lead magnet. And what it does is it gives people something of value. So hopefully you are finding value from that roadmap that I created. And in return, I get something of value, which is the right to email you. And that's how a lead magnet works. You can also just ask people to sign up, which if you go to my Girl in Space podcast website, which I think is like girlinspacepodcast.com, should probably know what that is off the top of my head. You'll see like a little bar on the top that says, hey, sign up for updates and news about Girl in Space. And people will enter their email address in there, and that goes into a database. So if you're interested in doing something like that, we won't talk about the lead magnet right now because that's a little bit more in depth. But just to start collecting email addresses, if you have a website, well, first of all, have a website for your show. You can make them very easily. I like recommending Squarespace. It's, I think, $12 a month. So it might be a little spendy for people, but it's very good, and it will collect your email addresses for you. So it'll have like a little widget that you can put on your website that says like, hey, sign up for email updates or my newsletter or whatever. You can also use, I use sumo.com. So if you go to my website and you see I have like that little strip at the top that says, hey, download my PDF. And then there's like a little pop-up that says like, hey, sign up for my newsletter. And then at the bottom, there's a little thing that says like, hey, sign up for my course. Those are all integrated through a service I use called Sumo, S-U-M-O. I think it's sumo.com. So those are some options there for really simple ways to build your email list. And then the benefit to you is that when you have a live show coming up and you want to sell tickets, or if you have a book that you want to sell, or what have you, or even if you just want to say, hey, my next episode is out, and you may have some people who aren't subscribed to your RSS feed. An email is a great way to say like, hey, my new episode's out, come check it out. And while you're at it, download this PDF or something. I don't know. So I do advise having an email list. And I can go more in depth on this topic in a future live stream because I love talking about email. It's really valuable. Okay. Shannon just asked, how do you get people to give you their email? So like I said, yeah, lead magnet, having just space for it. I have not gotten a lot of email addresses through social media. Most of my email address signups have come through my website. So I don't know what that's worth advice-wise to you. But having a website, it has been invaluable for list building. Okay. Let's see. Tom asks, how do you pick a good podcast host like Libsyn, and what do you like or dislike about it? I'm very open and honest with what I like and dislike in podcasting. So I love Libsyn. They've been really good. They are a dedicated podcast host, which means unlike, say, SoundCloud, whose main target is musicians, Libsyn actually hosts, like their purpose is hosting for podcasts. So I mean, I've been hosting with them since 2015, say 20, yeah, January 2015 when I launched Right Now. I've been hosting with them for 5 years and never one issue. The show has never gone down. They're in the midst of updating their interface. So if I do say one bad thing about Libsyn, it is their user interface is a little crusty. It's a little old. And it's not super mobile friendly. So we'll just say that. Libsyn is also a paid service. So you can start at $5 a month. And I think their most expensive plans are $20 or more per month. So I host the Right Now podcast for, I think, $15 a month. And then I host Girl in Space for $20 a month. I could probably lower both of those. It's based on how much you upload each month. And it's not based on how many people are downloading it, which is something you want to watch out for. I selected Libsyn initially because I wanted to future-proof my podcast. And I'd been looking at some other hosts that charged you not for the upload, but for like they would cap your downloads. And I was like, well, one day when the Right Now podcast shows up on Oprah, I'm going to need millions of downloads. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get the host that will let me do that for no extra cost. I have yet to appear on anything Oprah related, but I remain hopeful. And I do recommend Libsyn. Acast is a great host. Blueberry is a great host. Trying to think of, and it's interesting because the space is growing exponentially. I feel like, every week or so I get a new email with like, hey, we're a new podcasting host. So there's a lot out there. Oh boy. Yes. So okay. So that's why I host with Libsyn. They're good people. They have a great customer service team. Rob and Elsie actually host a podcast about podcasting called The 411. And if you look that up, it's a great podcast about podcasting, and Rob and Elsie talk about their struggles. They talk about what's new in podcasting. So, oh, hey, Apple changed this, or Apple changed that, or Spotify just dumped, $10 billion into proprietary content. So yeah. Oh, Andrew says I use Anchor. That's right. Anchor FM. A while ago, people are probably tired of me harping on this, but a while ago, like a year ago, maybe a little more, Anchor had this weird thing where just make sure you read your license agreement. So Anchor is a free host. So they'll host your show for free, but just please, when you sign up for it, please read the fine print, and make sure that you retain all of the rights to your content. Okay. I want you to promise me that you'll do that. That's so important that you own your show. Okay. Okay. Serious time is over. Okay. We're back to smiling now, but also read your agreement, but also we're cool. Okay. The one thing I will say is do not host with SoundCloud. If your podcast is on SoundCloud right now, please start to make plans to migrate to something else. Will you also please do that? Okay. I have horror stories about SoundCloud. Okay. Not to turn this into let's trash different media hosts. Well, and I don't want to end on that note, but I've just noticed that it's 8:00 and I've been talking for an hour and my coffee is icy cold. But wow, I have had an amazing whirlwind time talking with you. Oh my gosh. Thank you all so much for being here. Are there any final questions? Are there any? Oh, Paul asks, do you recommend joining a network? What I recommend is fully understanding the benefits that a network could offer to you and your show. And understand whether you're joining a network or whether you're joining like a cooperative. So there's lots of, so like Multitude is a cooperative, I believe. The Whisper Forge, I think, is also a cooperative. So what that means is there's a lot of podcasters that come together and share resources. And then they also co-brand and they co-promote each other. Excuse me. And then you have something like a network, which is like Gimlet or Radiotopia or, whatever Wondery million other networks are out there. And with those kinds of networks, what you're often doing is you're getting the co-promotion, you're getting perhaps funding for your show to pay for actors, to pay for the production, and you're getting that network quality production, but you're also sacrificing a little bit. And what that sacrifice looks like and what kind of sacrifice you're comfortable making is completely up to you. But the benefit of joining a network like that is, so if you join Maximum Fun, which I don't necessarily recommend that you do, but if the McElroys talk about your show on their show, like you have access to their millions of listeners, and then suddenly you have millions of listeners. And so that can be a bonus, but often you're signing a contract that may pass off rights to your intellectual property to the network. I just remember the really tragic thing that happened with Starlee Kine's mystery show. I don't know if you listened to that years ago when it was being produced by Gimlet, but basically they fired Starlee from her own show and said she couldn't make it anymore. So I don't know. I would say make a very clear pro and con list about what you're looking to get out of a network and what you're willing to, I don't want to say let go of, but just understand what you're getting into. Please do that. And please understand, if you join a network, if you join a collective, if you join a co-op, if you join anything like that, ultimately, who owns the rights to your show? Who owns your intellectual property? That is so important. Okay. I'm sorry, Serious Sarah's back and she's telling you to own your intellectual property. You might sacrifice creative control. So if you have like a show with Radiotopia, you might need to put like a little Radiotopia logo on your, on your show art. You may need to promote other shows. You may need to buy into their ads. You may need to do a number of things. So being as vague as possible. Yeah. Okay. Paul suggests it's time to get more coffee, but it's 8 p.m. So I'm not allowed to have more coffee right now. But I feel like that's a positive-ish note to end on. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being your wonderful selves. Thank you for your amazing questions about podcasting. Oh, I am so, I love talking about podcasting. I love talking to podcasters about podcasting. So no matter what level of podcaster you consider yourself to be, I hope that you found something helpful out of tonight's live stream. If you have more questions, or if I didn't get to answer your question, please go over to the Seriously Successful Podcasters Facebook group. I'm in there at least once or twice a day, kind of checking questions and helping people. The community is fantastic. There's so many smart and amazing people in that community. So just go on over and join us at Seriously Successful Podcasters if you're on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, come hang out, connect with me on Twitter or whatever, and we can be friends. So Pete says, I was combo lurking and driving. Be safe, Pete, for most of this, but thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Tom. You're all so wonderful. Okay. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But I don't know if I have anything to follow up that, but enjoy your evenings. Keep podcasting. Let me know if you have questions. I'm here for you. Bye for now.